How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com.
Hey, Carl and Richard here. As you may have heard, NDC is back, offering their incredible in-person conferences around the world. NDC Copenhagen is happening August 27th through the 31st. Go to ndccopenhagen.com for more information.
NDC Porto is happening October 16th through the 20th. Go to ndcporto.com to register.
And check out the full lineup of conferences at ndcconferences.com.
Hey there, this is Jeff Fritz, the purple blazer guy from Microsoft, letting you in on a little secret about my friend Carl Franklin. You know, the guy who started .NET Rocks, the first podcast about .NET. In 2002, the guy who's been teaching Blazor on YouTube since 2020. Yeah, that Carl Franklin. Well, Carl's joined up with the folks from Code in a Castle to teach a week-long hands-on Blazor class at, are you ready? Get this, at a castle/villa in Tuscany. It's sort of a luxury vacation with Blazor learning built in. Carl's calling it the Blazor Master Class. You'll learn Blazor from the ground up, finishing the week with the ability to build and deploy Blazor applications. Since the training happens for only 4 hours in the morning over 6 days, you can bring your significant other, your partner with you, and you should, right? This part of Italy is absolutely beautiful. There's so much to see and do, and Larry and Marco from Code in a Castle are organizing daily activities both at the castle and in the area. The castle is in the Maremma, a less touristed region of Tuscany, offering both classic Tuscan hill country as well as easy access to the Etruscan Riviera with sublime local food, wine, and olive oil around every corner. Breakfast is included every day. There will be 2 communal dinners at the castle bookending the experience, and most other meals and all activities are included. And did I mention you'll learn Blazor in person from Carl Franklin? Listen, space is limited and for very good reason. This is quality training in a beautiful setting. Go to codeinacastle.com/Blazor2023. That's BLAZOR 2023 to take advantage of this amazing opportunity to join Carl in Tuscany for an unforgettable week of La Dolce Vita while advancing your programming skills in this important new technology.
Hey, it's .NET Rocks. I'm Carl Franklin.
And I'm Richard Campbell.
And Jeremy Miller is here with us. We'll talk to him in a few seconds. But first, hey, buddy, how's it going?
I'm slightly wounded.
No? Really? What happened?
We're getting close to moving. And so the neighbors threw us a little party last night. And I may have pulled out a 21-year-old bottle of whiskey. And somehow the whole thing disappeared.
Oh, my God.
So, such great neighbors. The toughest part of leaving this house is the neighborhood.
I got that because you always talked fondly of your neighborhood parties, and that's just nice. Yes, I have neighbors on one side that I like. The rest of them, the one across the street from me doesn't speak English, and the one cattywampus across the street, I'd rather not talk to them. So
just one of those things, right?
It's just one of those things. Well, anyway, let's roll the crazy music for Better Know Framework.
Awesome.
All
right, man, what do you got?
Well, what I have is episode 97 of Blazor Train, which is coming out today as we speak.
You're staring 100 in the face, brother.
Almost, yeah. But this one's important because there's no code demos. It's a conceptual overview of Blazor in .NET 8.
Oh, interesting.
And I won't, basically the mantra is it changes everything. And I won't tell you what it is yet. You got to watch it.
Right.
But I had this revelation while, the first time I was they were talking about Blazor United and stuff. They're talking a lot of features that didn't have anything to do with interactivity. And then I realized that's a good thing.
Right.
They've added stuff to Blazor that ASP.NET Core MVC has been doing, but now you can do it with Blazor components, and it doesn't require any, any server-side SignalR or circuits or anything like that. They're just features. So I think, with the new interactivity stuff being dynamic and you can choose it, plus these features of existing stuff that now Blazor, the Blazor web app template in .NET 8 becomes your go-to ASP.NET Core project type template because there's no reason not to.
Right.
Anyway, I just blew my mind.
Sort of a Blazor grows up moment.
Yeah, it really is. And that this is where Microsoft is putting their effort into. These Blazor components are great. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do interactivity. You don't have to do WebAssembly. You don't have to do Blazor Server. You can if you want to, but you don't have to.
Right.
It just changes everything. So anyway, check it out. Know it, learn it, love it. This is episode 1860. So if you go to 1860.pwop.me, you can go right to the video or go to blazortrain.com. Look for episode 97. That's it.
Awesome.
Who's talking to us today, Richard?
Grab comment off of show 1823, the one we did with one Jeremy Miller.
Hey.
Talking a bit about Wolverine.NET and Command and Message Bus. I had a lot of comments on this show. Mostly about Jeremy's rant at the end of the show, which was hilarious.
It was great.
Yeah, maybe a touch hyperbolic, so the literalists had a little problem with it.
Yeah.
And Rakyak says, this is a great episode, and I was amused by Jeremy's rant at the end. I feel like he might have missed the mark a bit there. In my experience, the prime benefits of a clean onion-style architecture do not really pertain to the horizontal, so to speak. I've worked in several such systems, and I can assure you that the vertical thinking was still very much the norm on all of them. Sure, by throwing a repository interface, which is, by the way, not prescribed in Clean, in front of data access, you leave the door open to swapping underlying providers and data stores. But honestly, whoever does that? Rather, the prime benefit of Clean, in my experience, comes from just abstracting away infrastructure and out-of-process details like databases and message queues, something that Clean does prescribe. Doing so promotes isolation of core domain logic, and that process hugely facilitates automated testing of that logic, which is where I've reaped the greatest benefits. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to disagree for a moment with, Jeremy's core purpose, which was you can over-engineer. Yeah. You can turn architecture into dogma, and that doesn't necessarily serve in delivering software. But, to Rakyak's point, there are architectural styles that certainly support making software more testable, and testable software is more reliable.
Yeah.
So, Rakyak, thank you so much for your comment, and a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it in the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By. And
you can follow us on X if you want. I can't believe I just said that.
Why?
Why X?
Yes, everybody knows. It's not like anybody's confused when you say Twitter, right?
Let's take a great brand and change it.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Apparently he's auctioned off all the last of the logo stuff. You can buy the big sign off the front of the building and things.
Anyway, you can follow us there. Twitter is what I'm talking about. Or on Mastodon, I'm Carl Franklin at techhub.social.
And I'm Rich Campbell at mastodon.social.
Send us a toot. Let us know you're out there. And let's bring on Jeremy Miller for the, 9th time. He's been on a long time.
He gets around.
Yeah. So Jeremy Miller started his career as a real engineer, and that's in quotes, but wandered into software because that looked like more fun. Since then, Jeremy has worked in and led software development teams in the computer manufacturing industry, finance, insurance, healthcare, and banking industries. Lately, Jeremy has been focused on leading software architecture teams and helping mentor other software architects. Having had roles both as an in-house software architect and as a software consultant, Jeremy has a great deal of insight into the challenges that confront companies developing and maintaining enterprise systems over time. Jeremy is well known for his open source software tools, starting with StructureMap and continuing today to Marten and Wolverine. also known as the Critter Stack, which we'll talk about. Jeremy is also a frequent author and technical speaker at software conferences and can be found at jeremydmiller.com. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, guys. Glad to be back. Just kind of point out, if you're really all the way up to episode 1860, you understand that puts us right on the verge of the Civil War.
Yeah, right. one more episode and it's Civil War time.
And sorry for the long-winded bio. If I'd remembered you were going to have to read that out. It's like when your kids want you to read a book that is just the most awkward thing in the entire world to read.
Right. Let's read Robinson Crusoe. Yeah, okay.
So I don't know if anyone else remember this as a kid, but there are the Lloyd Alexander series, I think Prydain books.
No, I don't remember those.
That we read as kids. So it's a fantasy series. It won all kinds of Newbery Awards for kids. And I loved it as kids. The Black Cauldron, Disney made a movie out of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all based on Welsh myths and mythology.
Cool.
So all the names are Welsh myths, and apologies to any Welsh speakers. They're a little hard to pronounce.
They are hard to pronounce.
A little hard to pronounce.
There's some weird consonants in there in places where they probably shouldn't be. Yeah. Well, do you have a comment on the comment?
I do. So he's right in the sense that that you can be okay with clean or onion or all that kind of stuff if you focus on vertical slices first, keeping the places. And I did an entire conference talk at NDC Oslo this year, the contrarian view of software architecture, right? Where all these prescriptive layered architectures go wrong. It's because people follow them maybe a little bit naively, but they build these massively horizontal layers where you still have this massive project where every single feature is spread out on these 4 or 5 layers. You can't follow the code at all. You can't upgrade anything because each individual layer is just too big. It is impractical to reap any of the theoretical supposed benefits of clean architecture, onion, whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stand by that rant. I've even got a whole talk about it now online.
It's a good rant. Well, what you been working on?
So at the tender age of 49, I have gone solo. So founded a company called Jasper FX Software. It's based named after my little hometown back home, mapped out on a blacktop.
But we should disambiguate Jasper FX, the company, with Jasper FX, the product that is now Wolverine, right?
Well, so somewhere or another, there's like an old recommendation to no name your product after your company.
Yeah.
And so Jasper was going nowhere. We renamed it. Somebody said, having a conversation with my other contributors on core team members for Marten of, hey, what if we call it Wolverine? It's the same family as Marten. Somebody started laughing and calling it the Critter Stack. Our buddy Khalid from JetBrains just, in 30 seconds just popped up. Here's the possible graphics and emblem for it. So Critter Stack was born.
I love Critter Stack. That's cool.
Yeah. It's a lot more fun.
You could be Critters Inc.,
Yes.
Yeah, Critters LLC.
Crittery.
Yeah. All right. So it's called Jasper FX. So is it based on services around your products, I guess, and consultations?
So, obviously this is very topical because of all the conversations going on, in lieu of the mock U incident. We're going to throw spaghetti up against the wall.
Right.
We are already started as a services model. We're helping a couple clients with Wolverine specifically. But we're hoping to grow into, both the services and a full-blown product company, service contracts, consulting, of course, but we are going to build licensed add-on models to Marten and Wolverine, specifically for bigger companies that need big volumes of data.
Right. Sure. So you're sort of taking the identity server model route, it sounds like.
Yes. So we're very conscious of what Do-and-Day Software has done. We don't start from anywhere near as big a user base as they did, but so we're going to try to stay with an MIT licensed open core, but build commercial products on top.
Yeah.
we've kicked around the idea of going to the business software license maybe at some point, but right now open core. As your listeners will know, that's very controversial. How do you take an open source project and take it sustainable without managing to aggravate the hell out of your users?
Yeah. That's been a topic of many of our shows.
Yeah. We have this story arc of the evolution of open source going on in .NET Rocks, and certainly we've had great conversations with different folks, including the Duende folks, about how they're trying to make a living as well as support their customers properly, because there's also impediments there. But the nature of their product as an identity product, very enterprise centric, was genuinely enterprises just plain old wanted to pay for it. I've also been paying attention to Troy Hunt's battles with things like the Have I Been Pwned API. He's charging like $5 for it. But the barrier to pay that $5 for most organizations, like, it's got nothing to do with the money. It has to do with the workflow. Like, what does it take to get a bill paid essentially inside of a company? It's just fascinating to me that we struggle with this in software to this day.
So I'm still very early in the journey. How to monetize things, I don't know. I am just right now we're paying attention to everyone else. We're, Duende going first. Definitely watching particular software. There's just a small handful of open source companies in the .NET world, and we're hoping to be one of them. But I don't have those answers yet.
Yeah. We haven't made it. We haven't made it. And I don't think we will make a show about this situation with Mock. We're in the middle of it right now while we're recording the show. Do you have a comment on it?
Well, first of all, people need to know what happened, right? They took a dependency on something that was sharing data, right?
So I'll try. So folks, and guys, honestly, I probably wouldn't have reached out to be on the show if I'd known that was going to happen. So, MockU is hugely used. I don't use it personally. I prefer InSubstitute and other options, but it's massively used, right?
It's a mocking framework. Yeah. For those who don't.
Yeah. Sorry. And there's a long history. So it's been around a long time. It is the download numbers he quoted online kind of shocked me. Those were big. So it's very widely used, and as far as I know, it's just Daniel. It's probably the only guy that's really managing it. So he has worked up this other small library that, as a way to try to gather up support, it was going to try to gather up, if you were using the library, it was going to try to look in, assuming you were in a Git repository, it was going to try and find emails from contributors from the Git history, and it emailed it back. It sent that back to some kind of central repository.
Yeah, phoned home.
Right. I think it was a well-meant attempt to just figure out who's using my tool, and I can build an email list and I can send them out. And hey, you're using this, you're getting value. Do you want to support it? The problem, he did tell people about this ahead of time, but you don't really get feedback on that kind of thing until people get impacted.
Right.
But when people started understanding, hey, this is sending information back, there's privacy concerns. People start talking about the European privacy.
Right.
I started paying attention to it when somebody said mocking library, compromising PI, potentially sensitive information. That's the first time I started wondering what is going on here. So that's my understanding of what's happening. And the reaction has been pretty harsh from the community.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, again, we don't do, daily shows here in real time. So it's unfair to we're publishing this a few weeks later. But, today on Twitter, you've got smart people in software saying everybody makes a mistake. Like, be kind, which I think is good policy, like, in general.
It would have been worse if he shared it with, or sold that data, I think. But if he's using it for his own personal email list to say, hey, thank you for using my stuff or whatever, it's a little more benign than sharing everything. Still not cool.
No, I think he's backed that out. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to take care of the privacy concerns and get on the right side of those kinds of issues. I'm going to say I don't think he should have done it exactly the way he did it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, he's apparently gained umpteen new GitHub sponsors. So maybe in this particular case, there's a happy ending for him. But it's bringing to light all the normal issues about how is open source going to be maintainable and sustainable here when so many of us depend on it in our jobs.
Sure. Yeah. You can't just act as if you're a business and you've got a user agreement and so anyway.
No, I mean, he did an experiment. Again, we can debate the methodology, but I understand it. It's funny to see that what it did generate was a whole bunch of new sponsors. So
well, anyway, I
don't want to show this as a strategy, right? It's just like,
I hope it doesn't happen to you, Jeremy. And
create controversy, get money. Yeah. I don't know if I want that system.
I'm not sure I would want that either.
I know of Mock. I don't know that I have it in any projects at the moment. I understand the situation he's got into. It seems unfortunate. And I don't know that where it'll go from here, whether becomes a talking point going forward in this larger story of how we make a living on our open source projects.
So on another topic, what's new with Wolverine?
A lot. So it's made it post.
Just since we last talked?
Yeah, it's made it post 1. It's made it to the big 1.0. It's the usage numbers aren't off the chart, but it's enough that I'm busy every day answering questions on Discord. Starting to work with some initial clients that are implementing it. Right now, about to push a lot of improvements for Azure Service Bus integration. We've pushed SQL Server, a new SQL Server back transport for people that want to do messaging. They already have a SQL Server database. They don't want to invest in other infrastructure. Right? Trying to drive. It also has a model to build HTTP endpoints that would be an alternative to minimal API or MVC for web services.
Yeah.
That was specifically meant originally for, hey, you're using Wolverine. You might as well pull this in because you'll need. When you're integrating with Wolverine, you're going to want to use transactional outboxes. There's a very strong middleware approach. And it turns out, I think the HP service model is starting to catch on because it's lower code ceremony than MVC. I think we have the potential to beat minimal API and MVC by quite a bit with performance as well, just by having a lighter weight runtime. So I'm real happy with how it's going. And to circle back, so some things that have changed significantly since the last time we talked that kind of surprised me, it has, through a lot of early user suggestions that I'm glad I listened to, it's kind of gone off into kind of a quasi-functional programming approach. I'm going to take a lot of crap online from Fsharp. Driving to a point where I think using Wolverine is going to allow you to get to a very maintainable code base with very low code ceremony without having to pull in really complicated clean architecture, onion architecture, whatnot. Being able to do more.
Does it use a fluent syntax, for example?
No. Functional decomposition, much more conventional based.
Okay.
But being able to break a single handler, single message base, start organizing our code around use cases rather than nouns.
Okay.
Being able to very cleanly put your data access, the actual business logic, and some post-processing handling all in one file, but still have very clean separation of concerns. Just you have far fewer coding artifacts. All the related code is together in one place.
Well, that's good.
All the testability you want, put closely related code together, minimal abstractions, don't scatter your code all around a prescriptive clean architecture project structure.
Well, that sounds great. So why did you wince when you said the word functional?
I have gotten into it quite a few times online. The Fsharp community can be very enthusiastic.
Oh, come on. You can say a better word than that.
Do y'all remember decades ago on Saturday Night Live, there was a skit with Sir Patrick Stewart?
Yeah.
The if it's not Scottish, it's crap.
Oh, yeah. And Mike Myers.
Yeah. To me, the Fsharp folks, they're Sir Patrick Stewart.
A little dogmatic, you mean?
If it's not their way, it's crap.
Yeah.
And that can rub me the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Wolverine is probably turning out to be eventually very Fsharp friendly. It is going to allow C# developers to maybe write code a little bit more functionally.
Oh, that's good.
That's certainly a show we've done as well, right? That you learning a functional language helps you write more functionally in other languages as well.
Right.
And I don't know that I necessarily point at the Fsharp folks as the dogmatic ones. Folks that like functional, because it's not the most popular way to write code in the world, they tend to be very enthusiastic about doing that. Like you don't write functionally by accident.
Yeah, that's true, Richard. That's well said. I don't think of Don Syme as dogmatic.
I didn't say dogmatic. I said enthusiastic.
I did.
There you go.
So I'll take that one.
But folks can also, whenever you talk to a smaller community like that, like they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
There tends to be a higher intensity in general, the way they approach their language and programming styles. And they probably worked pretty darn hard to get good at it too, Yes. Functional is a challenging way to think. No two ways about it.
But just to follow up on that just a little bit. So a crucial difference between Wolverine and its natural competitors, the Mediator, In-Service Bus, Mass Transit. I'm going to leave some out. Sorry, folks. Brighter from Ian Cooper, Rebus. They generally follow a pattern I refer to as the iHandler of T approach. Sooner or later, there is some interface you have to implement that has a couple generic constraints for what's the input type. Right. You have to conform to their model. Yeah. Wolverine instead wraps code around. We wrap our adapter around your code.
Okay.
Sounds a little abstract.
As with inheritance model?
It's doing runtime code generation.
Oh, right.
Around your code.
Great.
It's not as crazy as it sounds. But it enables us to do a lot of things like out of your handler methods or your web service methods, you can return an object that just says, I want this document saved. I want this file saved. So one of the things it does for it, or I want this other message sent out. My message, I'm going to decide what gets done next. Does it go to this web service, that web service? How does it continue? Yeah. But you're just returning a value. Your handler functions become pure functions. They don't have to be asynchronous anymore. They just take in data, return data for what's going to happen in some cases.
That's great. Actually, the more I don't have to modify my code to suit a transport, the better. Yeah.
Yes. That's our theory, and that's our hope that some people are going to hate it, but we just hope that enough people love it that we have a viable path forward.
Yeah, and it's funny how much you have the thoughts about using this path of success or falling into the pit of success approach to. If we use a tool this way, like just good things are going to happen.
And that's very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard. As a tool company, it's really the only way to get, it's the goal, but the only way to get there is to get it out, used by enough people that you get feedback on all the things that are confusing or the ways that they use it that you didn't anticipate. And it's kind of a long-term sandpaper approach. They find all the rough spots in your system, everything that's confusing, and you're just constantly sanding off that. So,
but at the same time, you still want to stick to a path, right? Like you don't want to be all things to all people. This is kind of an opinionated approach to building software. So, it's a question of, is that a rough edge or is it the wrong way?
Yes. And so far, again, it's not a huge amount of usage. I don't know if it'll ever go mainstream, but some people that are into it have really liked it and even seem to prefer it over the older iHandler of T approach.
Hey, if it delivers results, right? That's what people care about.
Right.
Yes.
And gentlemen, and I use that term loosely, I'm going to interrupt for one moment for this very important message. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey.
Chatting with our friend Jeremy Miller a bit about his new reorganization and reorganization for Marten and Wolverine, the Jasper FX folks. And just this idea of how approaching software, I'm not going to say from a less formal style, but, lightweight.
I think you should call it critter style. Serious?
We're definitely aiming for the lowest, for a very low ceremony code style.
Right. That also leans towards, and I'm thinking about conversations we've had recently towards this mindset of small teams. And a lot of these ceremonious approaches to software are built around the mindset of we have a large number of people that we want to work simultaneously. And so the ceremony is actually a way to keep those folks in line. But if your team's not that big, and if everybody can fit around a table for dinner, then staying low ceremony makes a lot of sense. You get more delivered in less time.
So maybe taking a tangent from what you're saying, going to the topic of microservices, which I know we're in a full-blown backlash against microservices.
Yes, we are.
The pendulum has swung.
Yeah, or we're in the trough of this disillusionment. Maybe. So what I am seeing is some efforts, some attempts to adopt microservices are defeated because they still try to adopt a full big bang clean architecture approach of, this thing is technically very small. It could be, but I'm still going to use 4 different projects. I'm going to do a bunch of layering. I have all the exact same overhead to get all this extra stuff in there to write just a tiny bit of functionality. And that's defeating the purpose of using a microservice. So I think the pendulum's going to correct just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I think so. Hope so.
A tiny bit. Yeah, it's going to come back a little bit. But the microservices thing is going to work if you could just write much simpler code where you can see everything together and then stay in the arena of I'm also going to try to purposely pick tools that play very nicely in integration testing. Kind of another theory, and this is something Wolverine and Marten especially are built on, is the idea if you can make integration testing easy all the way end through the database or through the messaging with Wolverine. If you can do that, then I think you worry much less about abstractions and mock libraries and all this extra stuff. If it's still easy to test your code, I don't worry quite so much about splitting that stuff up, that extra stuff just to get unit tests in. So it's another way of driving towards simpler code.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you use the term trough of disillusionment, which is from the Gartner hype cycle. And it's funny because I've been using it on Windows Weekly lately to talk about large language models, right? It's like, this changes everything and so forth. It's like, we are at the height of a hype cycle right now, boys.
Yes, we are.
Let's be clear. You could never be more deluded than we could possibly be about this technology right now with all the noise that's going on. But just it's not just up and then down. It's you come back up again, right? The Gartner folks call it the slope of enlightenment you climb out of the trough of disillusionment with. That there is this oscillation, overreacting both ways before you sort of settle into a sort of reasonable, productive approach.
Right. Anything that's parabolic is ultimately going to come back. Yeah. Come back down. Yeah.
One way or the other.
I'm sorry, I did have this queued up because I knew we were going to have to talk about the mock-Q situation.
Yeah.
So one of a common thread I see going on, what's left of whatever Twitter's called now and Mastodon, is why are you using mock libraries? You should never be using mock libraries. So two things can be true here. Folks humongously overuse mock libraries in ways that makes their tests very brittle, very slow, extremely hard to understand. I have probably caused that younger in my career, and I have tried in vain to help teams get out of that situation. But at the same time, there's absolutely some very valid usage for these mock libraries, like mock-Q or in Substitute. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right. I call these things, they're kind of red pepper flakes approaches. A little bit can be good. A lot is probably always going to be bad. So don't swing guardrail to guardrail of, we're way overusing it. No, they're always bad. Throw it out altogether.
Well, there's a couple of silos and scenarios that really you do need mocks. When you're doing communication with something that costs money and you don't want your tests to rack up a lot of bills and it's relatively simple data, throw a mock in there. There are some situations where it makes absolute sense.
It does. Now, some people are going to argue with you as well that you would just use some kind of static hand-rolled fake, and that's valid too. But there's absolutely places I would want to use a mocking library for testing collaboration or interactions.
Yeah,
but all things can be overused, and for better or worse, I think our industry is prone to overuse. I think we struggle enough with tools that once we get good at one, we try to use it for a lot of things. It's like you get your head around a mocking library, and you're like, I will now mock all the things.
Yeah. And I helped cause some of that. That was
You're clearly repentive though, Jeremy. Clearly.
I've seen it go very badly.
Yeah.
But yes, I helped cause that with Structure Map had an auto mocker that made it way too easy to use those kind of tools, and folks ran with it.
Yeah, I think that if you just inserted more pain into your software and made it more painful to use, that's the way to go, because then people won't use it, and that's what you want, right?
And you're laughing, but that's an argument we really had over auto mocking tools 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That it's better for everybody if we make it a little more painful so people notice when things are off the rails.
Right. You put up in the IDE, are you sure you want to do this?
Is that really the answer too? But yeah, living in the Microsoft space, Microsoft is famous for the very gradual level of education. You can get in early, not know much, get some results. There are plenty of other tools out there that have high cliffs where you've got to know quite a bit before, compile one works.
Yeah.
And you get somewhere. And there's a trade to that. You end up with a much more gradient range of skills with these easy entry tools. And although, you find someone, who's effective in a challenging language, and you can point at Fsharp. Like if you can get code out the door with Fsharp, you probably know quite a bit, because getting good at that isn't trivial.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet too, it would be easier if you started with Fsharp versus going through, I don't think people really do a lot of OO with C#, but, starting with a class-oriented language like C# or Java.
Oh, yeah. The unlearning effect is very interesting. If the first programming languages you ever learned were functional, that's the way you're going to think. Switching between those thought processes, that's tough.
Yeah. Or from our generation of folks, I know I'm a little younger than you are, but our generation of folks, learning very database intensive programming first.
Yeah.
I think what was the terrible saying that if you learn basic first, you can never learn to be a real developer? But, getting people to move off of being a very database centric developer, that's something folks used to struggle with.
Yeah. Because it depends on what area you're from as to what were you learning and why were you learning it, right? If you came into software development in the client server time, you were doing the same data modeling approach over and over and over again. We were speaking directly to databases. Everybody wrote a little SQL. Like that was just the world as it stood at that time. And it is interesting to think about how much of your original coding mind is shaped then.
It's true. Taking that as a tangent, because I refuse to let this go. Going back to picking on clean or onion architectures. A lot of the prescriptive guidance you see from those things, people very naturally, I think, use very CRUD-centric examples. Here's a to-do, or we're going to do something about invoicing. So I have an invoice controller, and everything that touches an invoice goes through an invoice controller, an invoice service, an invoice repository. That kind of noun-based code organization is where bigger apps go terribly wrong with clean or onion or anything like that. I see several other people that are starting to talk about this a little bit more, and I'm jumping on this bandwagon, moving toward organizing more around use cases or the messages or inputs and operations. The vertical slice architecture idea.
Can you explain what you mean by noun-based? Like, what kinds of nouns are you seeing people?
Yeah. So, in a CRUD-centric view of the world, or really a data-centric view of the world, I have, let's say I use an invoice, because it's always a little lame. Everybody has an invoicing system somewhere. So I would have an invoice controller that may have get post put for modifying an invoice. And as it gets bigger, it probably gets a lot of extra operations for approve the invoice, so on and so forth. But I am first organizing the code of anything that touches an invoice goes in these files, invoice controller to service layer to the invoice repository. And you can if you're not careful, and this happens all the time, these classes, these horizontal layers for an invoice get very bloated. That's kind of a noun-centric view of I am organizing code based on its data storage or how this relates to an entity noun.
All right. So the entity noun would be invoice in this case.
Yes.
Yeah, I got it.
So in that vertical slice architecture, I think that's Jimmy Bogart's terminology. I think I like the terminology. Instead, I want to organize, and other people describe it, I want to organize around the verbs. What I would say is you want to organize around the use case, a message. Right. Say, I want to organize code around approving an invoice. So in one file or one namespace, I'm going to have the DTOs that model the message for the approve invoice. Yeah. I'm going to put any kind of data access business logic that's specific to that use case goes right there. And there's all kinds of wrinkles. If it's shared logic, then it doesn't go there. But anything that has to do with that particular use case, I'm going to put it together right there in a tight area of code. I still want separation of concerns.
And also, you're not building a slice for approving everything. It's just approving an invoice.
Yes.
So it's more granular.
Yes. But just think of all the times you're in one of these big, very, very large systems and there's some kind of problem and you're trying to troubleshoot what's wrong.
Right.
You're not reasoning about your data layer. You're reasoning about the vertical pipe of how does this message turn into whatever it does.
Yeah.
By putting all the code for that one message as close together as possible, I think you've got a better chance at being able to unwind what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I find this fascinating. Like, we're really kind of talking about a minimal approach here. One of my issues with vertical slicing, the vertical slice approach then is also you've got this Conway's law effect. You now have a piece of code that works, that's kind of end to end. I think you're prone to hanging more things off of it than you should. Like, at some point, you're just sticking stuff there because it's easy to add it rather than make a new slice.
Right.
Yes. So I'm going to take that one as well. So I've been preaching a little bit about code ceremony. And sorry, folks, we're going on a little bit of a trip. My furry four-legged coworker really desperately wants to come in.
Yeah, that's okay.
The other thing that strikes me is that once you've got a working vertical slice, it's somewhat, the Conway's law effect comes into play of you've got a system that works, so you're going to tend to reflect it. I suspect you start hanging features off of it that maybe should be in a different slice because the commit to building another slice is pretty high compared to, I'll just stick it in the slice that works.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a great point. So let's dive back in yet again to that theme of trying to go for lower ceremony code. Because what you're talking about, that's something I have really seen be a huge problem in big enterprise systems, that they just accumulate code as client A wants this, client B wants a special logic. And you get these very bloated controllers, message handlers, whatnot. So code ceremony. And you think of that as how many mandatory steps do I have to take to split something off? Do I have to add 4 or 5 different classes to do it? Do I have to go to umpteen different projects? Do I have to map something? Or can I just kind of pop something off in one file and do it very lightly? Mandatory steps for, do I have to explicitly code up new authorization rules? I've seen that kind of splitting you're talking about. I've seen it defeated by mandatory instrumentation. Like if you're doing, hopefully your framework handles things like open telemetry, emitting, and error handling and logging for you, like Wolverine does. But if you're doing that manually, where you're saying the developers have these rules of thou shalt always write this log statement, you have to explicitly handle errors this way, that is going to add so much overhead that you will tend to not split features in those slices up, and that'll lead to bad code.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is, and a plug for Wolverine, rah, which is cool. But what you're saying is because Wolverine doesn't inject or impede or impose you to redo your stuff. Like it sounds like you have error handlers around the stuff that you're calling. So you don't have to do that. You have logging around the stuff that you're calling.
Yes. And, in another sense, Wolverine is that way because of the experiences I've seen with enterprise systems. Yeah. Where they had higher ceremony coding models. Mm-hmm. Try to take care of things like instrumentations and security are great examples. Mm-hmm. At this point, you want open telemetry on everything these days. Yeah, and it's really nice if it's just done for you so developers don't have to think about it.
Right. But you don't necessarily want to do that at the stack level or the slice level, rather.
Yes. Or that's how I feel about it.
Well, yeah, you used to have to roll this stuff. You used to have to build those horizontal pieces. But I mean, I think to your point, it's like, these are solved problems. Just use them.
Right.
Yes. And to go back to here to really put this in perspective for younger folks. So I started my first serious software development. It was Oracle PL SQL, but then it was Visual Basic.
Yay.
And so VB6 didn't have stack traces.
That's right.
Younger folks are horrified at this idea that they didn't exist. You would manually, in every single method, every single function, you would have a little bit of on hair or something. You would manually build up a stack trace yourself in every single method to make this happen. This is a rule I enforced on my team.
Well, because VB programmers didn't write bugs. So why would we need a stack trace?
But here, that bloated the size of your code to the point where you didn't want to break things up. Or, sorry, Richard, maybe to go to your generation, COBOL developers.
Nice. Yeah, thanks.
So
we are the same age,
If you've worked around COBOL developers, I used to say I can look at code in any language and tell you that was a COBOL developer. Right. So there was a very serious performance penalty for pulling out a separate method or a separate function.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look at COBOL coders, they were taught. Yeah, they were taught. They would have these massive page upon page functions that were bigger than anything you've ever seen before because they had an incentive to do that way. And just how awful that is to deal with.
Yeah.
I argued that the object orientation won back in the 80s because it utilized the computing resources more effectively at the time. That manipulating a given area of memory that you're calling an object was more resource efficient than the tendency of functional to do copies of things in memory, for immutability. Mm-hmm. We like immutability for making more reliable software, but it used more processor, it used more memory. And at the time, those were constraints. They aren't anymore. Mm-hmm. Today we have enough memory and compute that we can afford to make more reliable software using these techniques than what was necessary in the 80s with the single core memory restricted machines we were using.
Touché.
It's not my fault, man.
We were just trying to write code, man.
I had to do it that way. That's all it was.
Shall we talk about, no, we're not going to talk about it, but I might bring up the memory of on error resume next, which means, hey, if there's an error, I don't want to know about it.
Yeah, just keep going. It'll be fine. Everything will be fine.
So the first thing I ever did professionally, when I was still a real engineer, I wrote an ASP Classic system on Access 97 from my engineering shop. It was great fun, but I just remember, hey, if you sprinkle this on air, resume next thing everywhere, things just work.
Things just work.
It's awesome.
It's great.
It's amazing.
And then, of course, this first system, it became successful enough that other people in my engineering group started using it.
Until we started discovering null values in the database. Where'd this come from? I don't know. It seems to be working.
Well, it's worse than that. I was running this on my compact desktop, and I came in one morning on a Friday morning and heard this terrible clicking sound where it was using my machine so hard it threw a head through the hard drive.
Oh.
Right? And so everybody's using this system now, and it's like, Jeremy, when are you going to get it up? My boss at the time, or somebody from the real IT people, because I was just shadow IT. Okay, so Jeremy, where is this in source control? And we'll help stand it up for you on a real server. And I looked up at him and I asked, what's source control?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the Power Platform stuff that's hot at the moment is a new generation of new developers.
Yeah.
They're domain experts who are trying to get things done, and they're using these tools. And I see that same sort of reaction of, quote unquote, real developers making fun of them, which I'm like, that's not wise. But they have to learn all these things too.
Mm-hmm.
Over on the run as side of my life, I'm talking to administrators about we're going to need to give these guys governance.
Yeah.
They give them some guardrails, make sure they follow the permission rules. Same thing. That piece of software is being successful. More people are using it. Let's get it out of the personal account of that person and into an administered system. That's the reality of solving things. But more importantly, it's just acknowledging we're never getting to the bottom of our to-do list ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not a thing. So anything that'll take a few more things off the to-do list is a good day.
Have you done any major updates to Marten? Speaking of, the current state of your Critter software.
It's coming. So Oscar Dudex has mostly been dealing with things. It's been a ton of, there's just bug fixing never ends. Dealing with new .NET versions. What is coming up for Marten is, we're making a big run at revamping the link provider. Link provider. It's ultimate permutation hell.
Sure.
So we're taking another stab at it, but also trying, we did have a very serious, contribution come in sponsoring, link improvements. So I'm trying to get those folks their improvements, trying to make it a lot faster. After that, it's actually going to be a lot of integration with Marten and Wolverine, first class subscriptions, the ability to stream data out of Marten, whether that's to Kafka or something else. And then the big thing, which I probably talked about the last time I was here, but this is this will be our paid model of being able to distribute work across multiple nodes in a big cluster.
Wow.
Whether it's multi-tenancy, moving tenants around, but finding ways to scale up Marten and specifically that asynchronous projection work you have to do with event sourcing to be able to spread that load over different nodes and maybe even dynamically bring things up and down elastically. That'll be our paid model. That's something we hope to get started. Well, we've already put some work into it, but that's the subscriptions, scalability, link improvements. That's where we're going next, I think, with Marten. Maybe next year we try to branch out. We might try to branch out into other non.NET platforms.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would mean yet, but that's longer term.
I find it fascinating that, you have folks that come at you with, hey, we really want this feature. How do we support you to get this feature done? Sometimes that's a monetary compensation.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that is interesting. So,
and if anyone's listening, the shingle is open. We are open for business. We've already done custom feature work inside of Wolverine and Marten. Hit us up.
Sure.
Well, what I appreciate about this conversation and about you and your products is that your products have your experience and wisdom built into them. And that's very clear. So I have no problem recommending them.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. And thanks for being with us. It's been great.
Hey guys, thanks for having me yet again.
All right, and we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time. Got a transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a